Abuse is about power and control. Abusers use fear to maintain this control over their partners. This fear is instilled through various tactics. Physical violence is one, but abusers also use emotional and verbal abuse. Threats, intimidation, and isolation are common tactics. They might threaten to harm the victim, their children, or even pets. Abusers might isolate their partners from friends and family, making them more dependent. This constant fear and manipulation make it very difficult for women to leave. They live in a constant state of anxiety, never knowing what might trigger their abuser's rage. Abuse often follows a predictable pattern. First comes the tension-building phase. Here, the abuser becomes increasingly irritable and critical. The victim often feels like they're walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering an outburst. Next comes the explosion, where the actual abuse occurs. This could be physical, emotional, or verbal. After the explosion, there's often a honeymoon phase. The abuser might apologize, promise to change, or shower the victim with gifts. This cycle creates a dangerous illusion of love and remorse. It reinforces the victim's hope that the abuser will change, making it harder to leave. Trauma bonding is a psychological phenomenon that often occurs in abusive relationships. It's a strong emotional attachment that develops between the abuser and the abused. This bond forms due to the cyclical nature of abuse, particularly the intermittent reinforcement during the honeymoon phase. Victims cling to the abuser, hoping for more of the good times. They might blame themselves for the abuse, believing they can fix the abuser if they just try harder. This trauma bond creates a powerful barrier to leaving the relationship. Society often blames the victim rather than the abuser. Women in abusive relationships face judgment, shame, and disbelief. People might question why they don't just leave, failing to understand the complex realities of abuse. This stigma can prevent women from seeking help. They might fear being judged by their families, friends, or communities. This fear of judgment can keep them trapped in abusive relationships. Family and friends can be a source of support for women in abusive relationships. However, they can also unknowingly contribute to the problem. They might pressure the victim to stay in the relationship for the sake of the children, for religious reasons, or to avoid bringing shame upon the family. This pressure, though often well-intentioned, can be incredibly damaging. It reinforces the victim's isolation and makes it even harder to leave. Financial dependence is a significant barrier for many women in abusive relationships. Abusers often control the finances, limiting their partner's access to money. They might prevent them from working, sabotage their job opportunities, or keep them in debt. This financial control makes it incredibly difficult for women to leave. They might lack the resources to support themselves or their children. This fear of financial instability can trap them in the relationship. Sarah endured years of emotional and financial abuse from her husband. He controlled their finances, belittled her constantly, and isolated her from her loved ones. He'd shower her with affection and promises of change, only to revert to his abusive behavior. Sarah felt trapped, ashamed, and terrified. She blamed herself for his behavior and feared being judged by her family if she left. It took years of therapy and support from a domestic violence shelter for Sarah to find the strength to escape the abuse and rebuild her life. We can all play a role in supporting women in abusive relationships. Listen without judgment, offer practical help, and encourage them to seek professional support. Educate yourself about the dynamics of abuse and challenge the societal norms that perpetuate it. Support organizations working to end domestic violence and advocate for policies that protect victims. Leaving an abusive relationship is a process, not an event. It takes immense courage, strength, and support. There is hope for healing and a brighter future free from abuse. With the right support, women can break free from the cycle of violence, reclaim their lives, and rediscover their worth.